This is my channel's weekly compendium. Case file number 1461, written by Anonymous. The Cryptozoological Anomaly. When I was 8 years old, I was riding with my mom and we were on our way to see my grandma and grandpa. We were on a rural road that runs through the deep woods. We were going along and all of a sudden, we saw a very large black cat. It had a huge head and after looking it up, it was a black jaguar. My mom and I both saw this thing and told others what we had seen. Everyone told us we were crazy. I told a fish and wildlife biologist what I saw, and they said they don't exist in the state or this part of the country. Fast forward 20 years, I was living in another state, hundreds of miles away. I was archery deer hunting a piece of property that sat across the street from my house. It was a cold November morning. I was about 30 feet up a hackberry tree in a climbing deer stand, hunting about 70 yards from the edge of the property line, and where a fence line separated the property from a cow pasture. I got in the stand before dark and hadn't seen anything all morning except squirrels when something caught the corner of my eye. I looked over and saw a big black cat walking along the fence line. It had a very long tail. It was different from the large cat that I had seen over 20 years earlier. There was thick cover between me and lots of hardwoods covered in green briar, but I could see it clear as day. It was very slinky in the way it moved, and it knew that I was there because it kept looking in my direction as it walked. It disappeared in a few seconds, and I never saw it again. I got down out of my stand and pulled my pistol out to walk out of the woods. It was scary to think about all the times that I had walked in the pitch black. Not being an expert in big cats, I've seen many bobcats in my life and I've had lots of house cats over the years. I began to research the cat I had seen. It definitely wasn't a jaguar and wasn't a mountain lion. I found pictures online of black leopards. The cat that I saw was solid black. It didn't have spots. You could tell that it was a juvenile. It wasn't fully grown. It looked young. Once again, I got the line well. We don't have those here. The strange thing was I had several half-wild cats that lived in a barn on my property. My wife and I fed them and they would come up and we would pet them, but they would freak out if we brought them into the house. So they lived in the barn. One cat was really sweet. She would follow me around the property and wherever I was, she would be within a few feet of me and just watch me. A few weeks before I saw that cat, she disappeared, which was strange. She was always around. I waited for days and weeks and I never saw her again. I believe that big cat got my outside cats. Case file number 1462, written by Nervous Elk 7053. My Reincarnated Skirt. A couple years ago, I was helping my mom clean out her closet and donate some of her clothes. We came across a jean skirt she used to wear a lot, but hadn't reached for in quite some time. She was hesitant to give it away, but I reminded her she hasn't worn it in a while. It's not in style right now. Maybe it's time to part ways with it. Note that we both remembered this conversation and decided to give away the skirt. Since then, jean skirts have come back in style, and we've had many conversations about how we regret our decision to get rid of the skirt. Well, this Saturday morning I got a message from my mother that while she was looking through her closet getting dressed for a funeral, bam! There is the skirt we both so dearly missed, was just right there in front of her, and she sent me a picture. We had gone through her closet multiple times in the past years since we got rid of it, looked through the spot where it showed up, and both of us swear it was never there. But now I guess the universe heard our disappointment and has returned the skirt back to us. So wild. Bonus file written by Icarus212521. The Midnight Visitor. I was 14 years old when I had one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. My bed faced a set of cupboards in front of me. The cupboards were old and designed in a way they didn't close properly. Instead, the inside of the cupboard had a magnet and the doors had a small piece of metal. Without either of those pieces, the door would remain slightly open. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt a heavy feeling on top of my legs. I opened my eyes and saw a black shape that kind of looked like an animal, but was about the size of a child crouched on top of my bed. It was just sitting there, looking down on the bed. I couldn't move until it started moving itself. I screamed and pulled myself up, grabbing and shoving the thing off my bed, and I ran out of it just about in tears. My parents searched my room. Nothing. My parents said I had a nightmare, and I was inclined to believe them. The next morning I got up for school. As I went to get dressed, I noticed my cupboard was slightly open. When I took a look at it, I found the metal on the door had come off. There was no indication that there had been an issue before, and I know I didn't touch the cupboard. My parents insisted I must have hit it, as they said they heard a bang as well. However, the cupboard was at the foot of my bed while the door is up to the sides. No object was found that could have hit it. No follow-up incident ever happened, and I never got an explanation. Case file number 1463, written by IndieGamer363, An Encounter with the Top Hat Man. When I lived in an apartment building on the ground floor back in 2020-2021, I kept catching glimpses of what I would call the Top Hat Man. It started with corner of my eye glimpses that made me just kinda confused more than anything. Girlfriend at the time knew and never questioned me on it. Even would sometimes ask if I'd seen anything when it seemed weird. Then one night, walking through the living room with dinner, I looked up and through the back sliding door blinds that were closed, I saw a clear as day dark shadow. It was clearly outside, so it would be like the blinds being the backdrop, the figure in the middle and a light shining from the street. It moved super slow and deliberately past my window like it wanted me to see it. Perfect silhouette, looked like a suit with a suit jacket with one of those longer tails, and a top hat. That one really freaked me out, almost like, here I am. You have been seeing me. That definitely messed with me for a bit. I always had this feeling of something circling our home, but never able to actually get in. Something definitely not good, but never able to do more than appear occasionally. But we never had any paranormal moments inside the home. The classic super intense stares into the living room for what felt like 10 or 15 minutes plus. Sometimes from our animals with the occasional fluffy backs like they were about to pounce. I am religious, but I usually kept it to myself. But I always made sure to pray over the rooms in any new home we moved into. Not sure if I pushed something out in doing so. The last time I ever saw him was walking to my car at midday. As I turned to move towards the car, I saw a figure sitting on a bench. As I looked up, I saw a man in an older black suit, arms resting on his upper legs, and a top hat. As soon as I realized what I was seeing, I snapped my head fully over and it was gone. It was at that moment I realized I'd never actually seen his face, that time included, but always could picture it whenever I thought of him or saw him. Looked up and my girlfriend was just staring at me. Asked if she saw it and she said no, but could tell I had definitely seen something. But he never popped up again. Not sure if my mind was feeding into a story or if something really was there, but definitely weird. Case file number 1464, written by Flaming Knife P. A UFO's Gyroscopic Dance. I saw a UFO/UAP. This was sometime in the late 90s at my parents' house in Portland, Oregon. I was outside in my parents' backyard, probably around 13 years old or so, and looked up and saw this smooth metallic disc that was tumbling through the sky. I wanted to run and get my mom's camera, but I knew I didn't have enough time, so I just stood there and watched it fly over the house and then head out of sight. My logical brain tells me that it was a mylar balloon of some sort, except it wasn't a balloon. From my angle, it was about the size of a dime or nickel, held up at arm's length. It didn't have any of the puckering you'd expect to see. There was nothing on the outside, and it wasn't really drifting so much as flying. All of its movements were 100% smooth. From the speed it was going at to the tumbling motion it was making, it almost looked like the way a gyroscope moves. I'm a pretty diehard skeptic, and I've spent a lot of time researching weather balloons and various other things that might use gyroscopic stabilization, but everything is a strikeout. I can't find anything that comes close. As much as I want to rationalize that it was a balloon, I know what I saw, or what I didn't see, as the case may be. I got a really good look at it, but it just doesn't make any sense. Case file number 1465, written by Past Independence 59. Overnight, my expensive contacts spawned a twin. For some background, I am 17 and live in Germany. I have very bad eyes, minus 16 in both eyes, so I'm blind without my glasses or contact lenses. I also wear very expensive glasses or contact lenses because they are a new special type which are supposed to stop my eyes from getting worse too fast. I noticed this on multiple occasions and it's so scary and weird, so I have 2 glass contact lenses, one for each eye, so a pair, and I only have those two because they are very expensive, 500 euros a pair. While on vacation, I was taking out my contacts and accidentally dropped one on the floor. I went to pick it up and clean it, and then put both my contacts away. I woke up the next morning to find one singular contact with my eye prescription. Like I said, literally -16, extremely rare, and I've never met anyone with that high of a prescription other than myself, laying on my bed. I freaked out, obviously, because they are expensive, and I thought I had somehow dropped it there last night and forgot to put it away. But I had slept in my bed the entire night, and when I checked my contact case, both of my contacts were in the case. Now I just, by some chance, had a third glass hard contact lens with even the same serial number spawn on the bed while I was sleeping, in perfect condition, which is even more unlikely since I toss and turn a lot in my sleep. I 100% would have broken it. Why does this happen? How? I got freaked out and threw it away because there are only around 5 pairs of the special type of contact lens I own in all of Germany, since they are still in testing, and I don't understand how this is possible. Things like this happen very frequently, too. Eating the last apple to turn around and see the apple I had eaten previously on my nightstand. My fake nail breaking, throwing away the broken nail, and then realizing my nail never broke, meaning I now had an exact duplicate of my fake nail. Things like this, it is very, very creepy. Please, can anyone help me and let me know if this has happened to you too? I'm dead but not kidding. It is very creepy. Case file number 1466, written by Beneficial Agent 4000. 29 crickets lost in a parallel universe. My son and I always watch stuff around glitches, and he, 10 male, will always ask me, 32 female, if I've ever experienced a glitch before, which I never had until now. My son had a bearded dragon, so I have to buy crickets a few times a week. I went to the pet store I always go to and got 30 small crickets. I watched the woman count them as she was dropping them into the bag. The bag is also blown up and not flat like a Ziploc bag would be. I get to my car, which is maybe 20 feet away, and realize there's only 4 crickets. I immediately think there's a hole and they've escaped, as this has been my fear since we got the beardy. But nope, no crickets anywhere and no hole in the bag. I know I saw her put 30 in, but figured I was remembering wrong. So I went back in and told her there were only 4 crickets, and her face drops. She says, "Actually, there's only 1 cricket in here." At that point, I knew I wasn't crazy. I clearly remember counting 4. She looked at me with a terrified look and said, "I know I put 30 in here. You saw me, right?" She even went as far as to fill the bag with water to see if there were any micro holes that they could have gotten through. There was nothing. We both looked at each other for a few seconds with a mix of fear, confusion, and debating our own sanity. These crickets are small, but still like half an inch. They're by no means microscopic crickets or anything. I told my boyfriend there's 29 crickets stuck in another dimension. Case file number 1467, written by Dave Hayes Music. The Melody of a Goodbye. My father had cancer and was in hospice at my home. The bed was set up in the living room in front of the TV, which was one of his favorite places. The bed was next to a wall, which had our kitchen on the other side. I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom most of the night and was showing her a bunch of songs. This was a common occurrence for me because I love music and always love showing people songs. A few minutes before midnight, I heard a noise come from the living room. I don't even know what I heard exactly, but I immediately paused the music and walked into the living room followed by my mom. We immediately saw his breath was slowing, and a few minutes later, he was gone. A half hour later or so, I realized that the song that was playing when all this happened was "Say Hello to Heaven" by Temple of a Dog. A while after that, my mom turned on the radio and the beginning of a chorus of "Before You Go" by Louis Capaldi was playing, which my mom turned off maybe 20 seconds later. Was all this coincidental? Likely, but maybe my dad was saying goodbye through music, knowing how powerful of a message it would be to my musician self. Case file number 1468, written by Chels182. That's not Venus. Couple nights ago, my boyfriend and I were visiting my mom. He goes outside to start the car while I get some stuff together to bring with us. He rushes back in and tells me there's an orange thing outside and it's moving. That's his code for one of the weird orange spherical blobs in the sky he's had a couple encounters with. So I go out to look and it's in the distance. Looks stationary. I use my Sky Guide app and it says it could be Venus, but that didn't make any sense. It was just a little off from where I was pointing and Venus would have been below our horizon line. Venus is also usually bright white, and planets don't twinkle. This thing was twinkling like crazy, and going from orange to red to white, getting bigger and smaller and brighter and dimmer. We're watching it go crazy until it finally gets big and bright, shrinks down to a little white dot, and blinks out. We waited there stunned for it to come back, thinking a passing cloud blocked it out or something. It never came back. No other star or celestial body around it disappeared, just that one. He showed me pictures he took before I came out, and the thing definitely covered some ground before I came out to look at it. This is rather minor on the weird scale for what I've seen, but it happened right before our eyes. Him and I have seen a lot of weird crap together as well, especially in the skies. Case file number 1469, written by Reddit user 112234. The house that ate my phone. When I was still living with my parents, my then boyfriend, now husband, and I were watching my 2-year-old nephew at the house. Me and my nephew were watching TV upstairs, and my boyfriend went to the bathroom quickly while I went down to grab something and threw my phone onto the bed. I remember it landing exactly in the middle and thinking, nice. I went back upstairs and decided to just leave my phone because I wasn't on it a lot at that point. After less than 2 minutes, I went back downstairs saying there's no way I can be without my phone for that long. When I got downstairs, I discovered it was gone. My boyfriend and I tore that room apart that day. I even looked between the mattress and bed frame and under the bed, thinking maybe it glitched through the bed. Of course, people said maybe my nephew took it, but he was upstairs the whole time, and remember, it was barely 2 minutes. We also didn't hear anything to point to someone stealing it, though it's high in that neighborhood. Throughout the years of my parents living there, I tore that room apart every chance I could. I looked behind a dresser and a bookshelf, under the bed, all over the closet, and found nothing. The day my parents moved out, I was pulling out random bags that were stored in an alcove above the closet, when all the way in the back, under a trash bag of clothes and about 5 bags in, I found the case for the phone I lost. We searched that alcove and the other one every single time we destroyed the room looking for it. I never got that phone back, and we searched every nook and cranny of that house the day we emptied out that house to move out. This is just one of our many things that have disappeared and the only one to not return after a while. It's also the creepiest thing to ever happen to me in that house. Case file number 1470, written by Human Cell 3158. We stumbled into a town that doesn't exist. This happened in 2016. I have an ex-boyfriend, and while we were together, we liked to just listen to music and drive around, discovering new places. We turned into this neighborhood one evening. It was early summer, late spring, around 5 or 6. Still a bit of light outside and fairly warm. On these excursions, I'd usually be using my GPS on my phone. Once we turned into this neighborhood, things got very strange and unusual. What we first noticed is that there is no one outside. No one bringing in groceries from the car or coming home from work. No cars on the road driving. Even on all the streets we looked and drove down. No children out playing or riding bikes. We mentioned this to each other, and we began to look a bit harder. Next, we noticed there's nobody in any of the homes, no lights on in any of the houses, as many of them had big front room windows you could look into. But they were all furnished and had cars in the driveway like people did live there. We began to get very weirded out. I'm trying to route us out of that neighborhood, but my GPS is completely not working. It's showing us driving down roads we weren't even on, turns where there weren't supposed to be any, etc. It's like we were going in circles, even though we kept trying to go down different streets to find the main road. Nope, nothing but eerie, empty houses. I think now that we were stuck in some sort of strange loop. It was reminiscent of a fake neighborhood used to test nuclear missiles on. But this was in the middle of Fairfax, Virginia, where there surely would be no nuclear missile test neighborhoods, right? We both start to panic at this point. Like, where the hell are we, and why isn't the GPS working? I've always been very good with computers and phones, am majoring in IT now, and was no stranger to my Google Maps app. We finally found this one road that looked like it led out of the neighborhood. We took it, as it was different from the others. What we discovered next shook us to our bones. It was a dirt road, unlike the others. After driving down it for a moment, we realized it led into a heavily wooded area. It was nightfall at this point, and we had been trying to find our way out for at least 20 to 25 minutes. We have no music on, as I had it paused so I could concentrate more on the GPS. We are driving down this road and see a huge house to the right. One light was on inside, what appeared to be the upper level mid-room. You could see light through the window and a black figure standing there. We are so spooked out at this point. The figure wasn't moving, like it was just watching. We are driving slow because we both just can't understand what's going on and are looking up into the window. What the hell is that? Then, so quickly, and out of nowhere, this white pickup truck begins tailing us fast. Way too fast to simply just be driving behind somebody on a dirt road, at least 50 miles per hour. I'm not crapping you when I say it chased us out of there. My ex is driving, hunched over the wheel while simultaneously looking out his rearview mirror at the truck. I have my back turned looking out the back car window. You could cut the tension with a knife as we're both freaked out. What the hell is happening? Drive faster, it's not slowing down. I can't drive much faster on this road, it's crap. We were in a small car. Eventually, the road finally and somehow leads out to the main highway. We both breathe a sigh of relief and just are absolutely bewildered at what just happened. We were both sober, and on the ride back, we were both asking each other, that wasn't just me, right? To this day, both of us are haunted by this event. We had some other very strange things happen after that as well. We were both sober every time we encountered something like this, but I'll digress for now. Case file number 1471, written by It's Mia Mia, the Wendy's Drive-Thru Mystery. So one day, my husband and I were out running errands, along with our, at the time, 1-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter. We went to a couple stores before going to Lowe's. My husband didn't have his debit card, so we were using mine. After Lowe's, we decided to get food. We went to Wendy's and ordered like normal. As we're pulling up to the window, I went to grab my debit card and couldn't find it. I then remembered that my husband used it at Lowe's last, so he should have it. We're scrambling around to find it before they opened the window, but it was nowhere to be found. Before the worker even opens the window, I tell my husband to ask if they take Apple Pay, because that's all I had at this point. The lady opens the window and he said, "Do you guys take Apple Pay?" She says, "Yeah, hold on a second," and closes the window and walks away. At this point I was annoyed because my husband lost my card, and we all know waiting for a new one is just a pain in the butt. Finally, the lady comes back. My husband has my phone in hand with Apple Pay ready, and the worker hands him my debit card. He started to say it wasn't ours, but he looked at it and sure enough, there was my name. Neither of us could remember handing her the card. We asked our daughter if she saw him hand it off, and she said no, but she was 5 and maybe she wasn't paying attention anyway. At the time, we tried to chalk it up to somehow he handed it to her and we just forgot, but we weren't really convinced. It's still something we talk about almost 2 years, not 3, later. Look back at my pictures to see the project we were working on that required us to go to Lowe's. This was finished in April 2022, so I got the amount of years ago mixed up. Oops. Case file number 1472, written by Sarah X11, the woman named Aroura. When I was around 20, a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aroura. They were different dreams, but for some reason, her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, I'm in the car with a friend, stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge into a highway when I get a phone call from a random number, so I stop the car, but no one answers. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second they get on the highway, some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. Turns out the drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't got that phone call. Called the bank a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. Rang 3 times and went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Aroura. Please leave your name and number." Never had goosebumps like that in my life. Called it again the next day because I was so confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers. We get to talking. I tell her my entire story, including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number and that she never called me as far as she remembers. Weird. Ask her if she has Facebook to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. Check her Facebook. Holy crap, it's her. If that's not a glitch in the Matrix, then I'm just bat crap crazy. Case file number 1473, written by FF0000IT. How King Crimson Brought Back Bob. I had a friend in high school. Let's call him Bob. Bob was a very nice fellow, and while we weren't that close, we had similar tastes in music and we'd share CDs. This is in late 80s, way before file sharing. Anyway, we eventually graduated, and I moved several hundred miles away to college and we lost touch. When I left for college, I had one of Bob's CDs still in my possession, Beat by King Crimson. Fast forward 10 years. I'd graduated college and was knee-deep in my career, and finally saved up enough money and bought my first house. In the new house and while unpacking, I see the CD in a box. Hadn't noticed it in many years and thought, gee, I really should track down Bob and return this. Right then, the doorbell rings. It's Bob. And he says, hey, you wouldn't still happen to have my King Crimson CD, do you? I look down. I'm holding it in my hand. I hand it to him, and his mouth drops open. Mine probably already is. We exchange pleasantries. I probably ask him how he found me, but I no longer remember. He eventually takes off. I haven't seen Bob since. Bonus file, written by Akie Sout. 2 sisters, 2 homes, 1 unsettling night. This happened around 2 years ago. I was home alone one night and was in my bedroom, watching Netflix. The layout of my home is that you come up the stairs and then go back on yourself along the landing. The bathroom door is on the right, followed by my bedroom. It was late, midnight to early hours, which is common for me. Suddenly, I heard a noise of someone being in the house downstairs and paused the TV. Then, as clear as day, I could hear the person walking up the stairs. I was completely frozen and my heart was racing, thinking someone is genuinely in the house and is about to kill me. My cat had also pricked up their ears and was looking out towards the landing, making my fear worse. They got up to the top of the stairs and began walking along the landing. The steps were coming closer to the bedroom, but then it was like they turned into the bathroom. I heard a noise in the bathroom and then nothing. At this point, my cat jumped down off the bed and went into the bathroom. They came out fine, so at that point I investigated and there was nothing. Nothing out of place. Nothing to explain the noises. Nothing downstairs. Nothing. I texted my sister to tell her what a weird experience I'd just had. We've both previously had weird and uneasy feelings and odd experiences before, her more so. She was also awake because the exact same thing had just happened to her. At the time, she was living about 50 miles away in a flat on the top floor. The stairs to her door ran alongside the flat, so you could always hear if anyone was approaching, and there are no other flats on that floor. It's just the one door to hers. The same thing happened where she could hear footsteps approaching the door and then it stopped, and nothing. It wasn't someone who came to the door and then turned around because you would hear the retracting steps. It was the strangest thing. I can't emphasize enough how sure I was that someone was walking around my house. Every step was so clear. And then nothing. But then for her to have the same thing happen at the same time, we just have no explanation. Case file 1461. The Cryptozoological Mystery. So many sightings these days of beasts and creatures where they just don't belong. They're navigating into areas that they shouldn't be in. Even if they're normal animals, it makes you wonder, what is the fundamental change that is happening to our planet? Is it climate change? Is it the realigning of the magnetic field? I don't know, but something's going on. Do you feel it too? It's some kind of planetary shift. Case file 1462. My reincarnated skirt. Yeah, this is a proper universal return. And it's curious that you don't actually need a DOP event, a disappearing object phenomena, to get the item back. Now there's ideas that maybe they just come from other parallel universes. They're not creating mass. The universe isn't creating mass from thin air, it's just borrowing it or stealing it from a different universe. But it's weird. I mean, there's no other way to say it because why with the specific skirt of anything that could possibly be transported over. It's like someone was listening and knowing that you wanted it. There is a mind at play, or maybe an AI of some kind. Case notes for the bonus file. The Midnight Visitor. Yeah, this harkens back again to sleep paralysis, and the things we see when we're just coming out of the dreamlike state, they aren't always, sometimes maybe, but they aren't always just figments or creations of our own mind. When they're physically interacting with the real world, well, clearly in that case, they're not just fiction, created by our cerebral processes, no. They really are there, not of the material world, but capable of phasing through, or at least interacting with us, in that dreamlike state, just coming out of it. There's a transition process that happens somewhat slowly, sometimes. Sometimes you'll wake up perfectly fine, you go to bed, blink, and then it's morning, and there's no transition process. But I think the deeper your sleep, and being awoken from that deep REM sleep, that's when things can break apart. And then you can see things that you're not meant to see. And now time for the joke of the day. A blind man walks into a bar, and a table, and a chair. It kind of sucks to be blind. You have to have one of those sticks that you just navigate in front of you to not, walk into a bar or a table or a chair. Yeah. I am thankful I'm not blind. Even though my eyesight isn't great, I can still see without glasses. What are you thankful for? Case also file 1463. An encounter with the Top Hat Man. There's multiple cases now reporting this Top Hat Man sighting. Either in a dreamlike state, coming out of sleep paralysis, or just in the open world. Out of the corner of your eye, a disfigured face, a top hat that's protecting something, and usually well dressed in a suit. But maybe it's not really there, maybe it's more of an apparition, an entity that is possessing your own mind, and channeling it to create this element or totem of fear, because that is what is reported, fear. Also, another thing I find interesting is the idea of using prayer as mind orientation, to use your own soul as like a protective shield or barrier in the surrounding environment. So this Top Hat Man might be there, but can't directly interact with you because you're protected. But he can still show himself to create fear, if that was the intent. Case also file 1464. A UFO's gyroscopic dance. This is the first instance I've read of a gyroscopic movement from a UFO. And it's an interesting phenomenon if you look at various physics demonstrations where if you have something that's spinning and you spin it at the right angle, then it'll conserve its own momentum so it can actually spin counter to gravity. And that makes you wonder if there's some way to use that physical property to cancel out gravity if you spin something fast enough. But to my understanding, that doesn't actually work. But maybe we're missing something. It's pretty cool. If that's how we attain anti-gravity, whatever the way, that would be awesome. Just broaden your mind to the possibilities, right? Who knows where technology is going to be in even 5 years or 10 years or 100, a century from now. You can't even imagine. Case also file 1465. Overnight, my expensive contacts spawned a twin. But this is weird actually, because it happens so often to you. So something is looking out for you, I guess, trying to give you extra stuff. Stealing it, robbing it from other alternate universes, and the users in those universes are losing out. Makes you wonder. I think there's only one true soul. Maybe those other versions of us are just computer approximations. They look at us, the real soul, and say, okay, well this is what he's doing, so let's extrapolate that to all the other copies, and they're going to go about their life generally in that method, really, that mannerism. But then there's some small tweaks, and those small tweaks and changes that the simulation doesn't get right produces all these variations. If you have a guardian angel, for instance, that can move objects from one universe to another, just spitballing here, maybe it's the real you, the one with the soul, and all the others don't really matter because they're just NPCs. Now maybe this isn't true, maybe every copy does have a soul, maybe it's almost partitioned, where you are all the other copies at the same time and you just don't realize it. You're only consciously aware of one. I don't know. I'm getting lost in my own thoughts here. But another thing that is bothering me is the increase in frequency of all these DOP events, these animals that shouldn't be where they are, and so on. And of course, the infamous black dot that we haven't heard of in quite a while. So that's a positive, but still. Is this an unstable universe? Increasing in instability? Or is it just reporting bias? So more people have access to the internet, and so because of that, there's just more stories. Maybe the latter. It's kind of like the increase in autism. Is it really something going on, or is it just better testing, more frequent testing, so on? Maybe it's a combination of both. I think it might be that. I think there is definitely a case where there's just more people that are able to report their weird events, but also things aren't entirely as stable as they were, say, 30 years ago. That's just my gut feeling, though. And now time for the quote of the day. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. Carl Sagan. This quote reminds me of the scene in The Matrix. I believe it's the second Matrix, or maybe the third one. Anyways, there's this old man, he's on the council. I forgot his name, but he's talking to Neo in the real world in Zion, in the bowels of the city where all the machines are operating and keeping everyone alive. But he says that no one really knows even how they work. It's almost like magic. And I suppose if you don't understand something, but it works, is that not magic? Until you understand it, and then the magic is lost. But you gain power. So, would you rather have the magic, or would you rather have the power? Question suivant, 1466. 29 crickets lost in a parallel universe. So yes, a DOP can occur even to living entities, and maybe it does mesh with having a soul or not having a soul. Maybe insects don't have souls. That is an interesting question. Where is the cutoff point? Does a virus have a soul? Bacteria? Single-celled organisms? I don't think so. Do animals? Probably. Human beings definitely, at least most of them. But then yeah, what about an insect? What about a cricket? Does a cricket have a soul? That is such an interesting question, and of course it's not really possible to answer it. It's just assumptions. We know they're intelligent, but intelligence in and of itself doesn't mean you have a soul. That could be computer generated. So it does make you wonder, maybe free will, the ability to make choices outside of your programming, is an indication that you have a soul. If you go and take actions contrary to that programming, yeah, you probably have some force, some will, some power, some energy that is within you that is able to power through what you're supposed to be doing, or supposed to be doing. But yeah, I would have gone mad, knowing that there were so many crickets in a bag and then they're all gone. That is one of the more overt kinds of DOP, especially when you have witness and it happened again in the shop when you went back in. Mind blown. Question suivant, 1467. The melody of goodbye. So I honestly think the music is a binding factor, a binding agent that can connect people together. And there is some truth to that. There's olfactory senses where smell, but also sound can play a great role in memory. And of course, we know each other mainly through memory. So if you want to remember something or someone, a song is perfect for that. Or it can be more literal, like a song talking about the afterlife, something like that. But yes, it's a beautiful way, if you die, and you have some method to control music that's playing next, to let them know that you're still around, or at least we're temporarily still around. Maybe they go into the white light after that, I don't know, but it's like the true love of the universe is the vibration of the atoms in the atmosphere that we need to live. Without the air, we have nothing. Question suivant, 1468. That's not Venus. There are a lot of Venus-looking UFO sightings, and a few of them that I haven't read on the channel, but the initial factor is that it moves in the sky and then it becomes stationary. Of course, Venus wouldn't do that, or the movement would actually be quite slow, even though it would be persistent and very consistent. So you have a case here where there is definitely an object up there. Doesn't mean it's alien. It could just be some unknown plane or object that, again, I agree, I don't think it's a balloon. But yeah, it definitely could be some sort of aircraft that we're testing, that the military is testing. Or it could even be some kind of blimp. I think those, if you have a certain turbine fans on it, can actually become stationary. So that's a possibility too. Question suivant, 1469. The house that ate my phone. So this is weird because the phone case returned. It's almost like something was trying to return the whole thing, but it was only able to manage the case. A partial DOP returned. Or it's almost like if you had the case where a skirt returned, a jean skirt. What if only half of it came back? Does it have to be the full thing? I guess not. But usually it is, almost always. In fact, I think this is the first time a DOP event returned the object and it was only partial. Very odd. Some mistake in that. There's almost like a DOP return, and then DOP, partial DOP again. I don't know, it's a jumbled mess in this one. And now time for the quote of the day. Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence. True friendship is a plant of slow growth, and must undergo and withstand the shocks of adversity before it is entitled to the appellation. George Washington. So I'm a big believer in that who we allow to be in our lives, to be close to us. Again, I agree, be courteous to everyone, unless they've given you a reason not to be, but that should be the default stance. But in terms of intimate relationships, close friends or loved ones, never feel obliged to be with someone that isn't a match for you. Maybe they're not even bad people, they just don't mesh with your personality and what you want from life. In that case, move on. But also, understand that it can take time. Give it a lot of chances. The seed grows very slowly, and often does have to be tested. But if it turns out that it's not the correct plant for you, that's okay. Move on, find one that is for you. Because if not, they'll be siphoning your energy forever. Case notes for file 1470. We stumbled into a town that doesn't exist. The chase scene, as you describe it with the white van, kind of feels like some sort of government agent. So, was this a town that was being tested for nukes? In Virginia? I don't think so. I agree with you there. But it does seem like it probably is some military testing site. If you want to hear something truly terrifying, the military has active drills to test combat scenarios against civilian populations, and I guess this would be one of those towns, where they actively build a town that looks just like any other town and send in military on drills, various drills, to quell an uprising or whatever they want to justify it as. That's more terrifying than any horror story I've read. That said, the inexplicable GPS malfunction, well, is it inexplicable? I'm not sure, but it is a wrinkle. Maybe the military has some sort of technology that is jamming the signal? I could see that. Case notes for file 1471. The Wendy's Drive-Thru mystery. So a kind of universal intersection, but only relevant for the debit card. Nothing else was different. What I want to know is, was the card charged? Because she handed it back to you, presumably the Apple Pay wasn't used. Or were both charged? That would answer a lot of questions. But in the meantime, all I can say is, the Baconator is pretty good. And now time for the fact of the day. It takes 10 to the 8th atoms laid in a row to span the width of a human fingernail, 1 centimeter. There's an interesting thought experiment, or just another fact I guess you could say, where we as human beings, our size, is relatively in the middle between the largest possible thing, or the grandest scope of the observable universe, and the smallest possible thing, the Planck length. But if you're just talking about atoms, even those are so mind-bogglingly small, it's hard to visualize. I mean, take this example. Even if you're just trying to quantify how many atoms are in your own body, or how many atoms are in each breath that you inhale and exhale, it's too many, it's such a large number that it doesn't even make sense. And so, in that way, you can feel big. And then if you think about the size and scope of the observable universe, then you feel small. But in reality, it's all relative. So don't feel big, don't feel small, just feel like yourself. Case notes are file 1472. The woman named Aroura. This is almost like Cupid mythology, where you could have a guardian angel that is trying to set you up. I don't think this woman herself had anything to do with saving you. And again, she was oblivious to even having called you, but it was from her number. So I think the guardian angel looking over you is sort of like a Cupid agent as well. Maybe for some reason you are destined or supposed to be with this woman, and it wasn't happening organically in this universe. So measures were taken to make sure it does. It's kind of like an arranged dating service, but on a meta level. I don't know how I feel about that. Case on file 1473. How King Crimson brought back Bob. So we can rule out coincidence, of course. My guess is Bob has some sort of psychic connection to you, psychic powers if you will, and he's not even aware of it. So by his mere presence of approaching the house with the goal in mind to retrieve the CD, it instilled in you the desire to go and clean stuff out and find the CD. In a certain sense, Bob had a domino field set up and he pushed on the first one without even realizing it. I think. Now maybe he's some super mastermind villain that is in full control of his powers, but I doubt that. That would be an interesting story to read one day. Bonus notes: 2 sisters, 2 homes, 1 unsettling night. So this is weird enough on its own, if it only happened to you. But combined, how do you make any sense of that? There's some kind of essence that is tethered to both of you. And whatever affects you affects her as well, even 50 miles away. It's sort of like spiritual quantum entanglement. And now time for the fact of the day. Time is relative. When you look up at the stars, you're reading messages in a bottle. And that information, it might not be deliberately crafted for us to understand or read, but it's still there, and read it we shall. The universe is a grand tapestry of ancient fossilized records, and it's up to us to appreciate it, because as far as we know, no one else can.